British art and culture was heavily influenced by World War One. Many of the artists who would go on to shape England's art and culture either fought or lived in this war. Looking at two pieces from the Metropolitan Museum of Art's Modern Times, British Prints, 1913 to 1939, exhibition, two pieces really demonstrate the evolution of styles as England progressed from wartime to the Jazz Age. Through an examination of a print of Troops Resting by Christopher R.W. Nevinson and Speedway by Sybil Andrews, the evolution of angular futurism will be explained. Christopher R.W. Nevinson was a British artist who was born in 1889. He studied art from a young age, attending two different art schools before World War One. While some recognized his talents, others told him he would not be good enough to make a career out of art. On leaving school, Nevinson moved to Paris, where he met a group of artists and thinkers who were experimenting with Cubist and futuristic styles. When the war started, he went to the front line with his father, who happened to be a well known news correspondent, Henry W. Nevinson. So moved by what he saw with his father, Christopher Nevinson would volunteer as an ambulance driver in the first year of the war. While home on leave in 1915, Nevinson would paint La Mitrailleuse, a painting of French machine gunners. This piece so impressed that he was offered his own gallery show in 1916. It is in preparation for this show that Nevinson would create several versions of Troops Resting. His wartime painting would go on to bring Nevinson's acclaim. The black and white prints of Troops Resting seen in the Metropolitan Museum of Art has none of the colors of the other versions, but this may add to its emotional effect. The lines are clean and simple. This is a group of exhausted French troops in their uniforms at the beginning of the war. Nevinson was struck by their bright blue coats and bright red trousers, covered in the filth of the battle. Their faces are angular, almost roughened, in the style of Futurism. While there is a jauntiness about figures when seen in color, in black and white, it feels sad and almost oppressive. Their tiredness leaps from the page with their heads bowed under the seemingly impossible weight of their helmets. In shape, the forms of the men create two triangles. They are almost piled one on top of the other, and while in a group they seem alone, this is not a group of comrades. This is a group of solitary men suffering. They have seen too much and it shows. While their faces are without detail, they feel gaunt and hollow, almost as if they are the living dead. These are the men that the French would call the Pralus, or the hairy ones. It is a tribute to them, as the viewers know these men may not last much longer in such a terrible conflict. They do not move, and in fact, the lack of movement makes the sense more powerful because their exhaustion is apparent. Conversely, Speedway by Sybil Andrews is all about movement. Sybil Andrews was a British artist who would move to Canada after the Second World War and only become world famous after her death in 1992. Her work has been described by Andrew Rafferty as modernism tempered with a wit and aplomb that is irresistibly charming and unmistakably British. She was studied art by correspondence, do war work as an airplane welder in World War One, and go on to create a studio with Sybil Power in London before World War Two, when she would again do war work. One of the ways in which Andrews distinguished herself was through making posters for the London Underground, through the 1920s and 1930s. Speedway is a little cut print of three motorcyclists coming towards the viewer as in a race. They are a diagonal slash across the work from corner to corner on a field of white. Each cyclist forms a T shape with the handlebars arcing in a graceful but powerful curve. It balances out the hard angularity of the torso and knees of the figures, which form a strong, almost hourglass shape. The helmets of the riders almost feel like the rounded tops of bullets, adding to that feel of unstoppable motion. Curving up from the tires of the motorcyclists are lines showing their speed. These motorcyclists are coming right at the viewer, and if he or she does not move out of the way, there is no denying that there will be an accident. The colors of Speedway are simple, stark black and equally stark white, with hints of fading cerulean, as the prints must have taken away the color. The figures are copies of each other, and it is only the difference in print color that makes them individualized. Perhaps an earlier print would have had more vibrant blues. They have goggle eyes that almost gleam in the light like the sun is reflecting off the glass. The hands or gloves and the trousers are brown, as is the pastoral looking field outside of the Speedway. This is a nod to Andrews' use of angular futurism with architectural motifs in her other work, which was almost contrary to the school of futurism, which leaned itself to technological or mechanical subjects. The futurism of Speedway gives it a strong 1930s Art Deco flavor. While Speedway is about motion and Troops Resting is about stillness, they each represent futurism well. Perhaps it is because in Troops Resting we can see what is to come. The mechanized, impersonal angularity that would grow throughout the 1920s and into the 1930s, the troops are resting because the violent action of their world transforming has drained all their energy away. Yet still they do have some individualities. By Speedway, the men have become the same, and they move towards the future. With such speed, we can only jump out of the way to avoid being run over by them.